Okay, so guys, I am hyped to actually sit down and cover Operation Zero Tolerance. Now, here's the thing because we're covering a couple of issues in the beginning of the actual crossover is Wolverine, X-Force, X-Men, Generation X, like all these different books are coming together for this crossover. Now, there's no X Factor and there's no Excalibur once again. I realize they have done Excalibur dirty when it came to these X-Men crossovers in the 1990s. But anyway, so when it comes to Operation Zero Tolerance, the first chapter, X-Men issue number 65, it does pick up literally where our last video had left off at. Now, here's the thing though, because technically this issue is more of a prologue, but for me, everything just sets off with this issue right here. Like, it's Bastion saying, okay, it's now time for me to handle the mutant situation. But here's the thing, because the first few pages, we don't really get the chance to see Operation Zero Tolerance. Instead, we see Jean Grey right now being confronted by Iron Man. Now, when it comes to Operation Zero Tolerance, it does pick up 1997. In that year, Iron Man, the Avengers, the Fantastic Four, they were still in the Heroes Reborn reality. And so for Jean Grey, somehow in some crazy way, she was transported into the Heroes Reborn reality where she's confronted by Iron Man. He's kind of like, hey, who are you? And how in the world did you get here? And the thing is, in that reality, there is no X-Men at all. And so for Jean Grey, she's kind of like, wait a second. There's no Iron Man because in her mindset, Iron Man is dead. She has not realized yet that she's in a different reality. Now, after a while, she does realize that. But the thing is, out of nowhere, Jean Grey is then pulled back into the main Marvel universe. And so as we switch back over to the X-Men, the main Marvel universe, and now Jean Grey is also back there as well, you now have the X-Men just trying their best to survive because at the end of our last video for the X-Men, they were being attacked by some members of Operation Zero Tolerance. And so for our heroes, they're kind of like, this jet was not really made to take the hits it's currently taking at the moment. This jet was given to us. It's not a Blackbird. And so for our heroes, they're just trying their best at the moment to just hang on for dear life. Now, for Cannonball, his main goal is try to help the X-Men survive this situation. So he gets off the plane, he activates his powers to fight against the other jets that are currently being used by Operation Zero Tolerance. But while you have that going on, we switch over to Henry Gyrich. Now, man, Henry Gyrich is a complete jerk, but like, that's Henry Gyrich for you. And so what he's doing at the moment is trying to paint a picture of the X-Men technically being terrorists. He says the X-Men are a known terrorist group out there that had just randomly attacked 3 pilots who were just minding their business. The problem was they had no idea those 3 pilots are basically part of Operation Zero Tolerance. And so for Henry Gyrich, while being on live television saying all that, he's right now painting this bad picture of the X-Men. But it's also him explaining like what is Operation Zero Tolerance to the public. Because for the public, they didn't really know about this. Like the government did, of course, and so did the X-Men and us, the readers. But for the public, they had no idea. They're kind of like, wait, what's happening? It's Henry Gyrich saying that different countries around the world agreed to work together to allow Bastion the chance to build up his army to go after different mutants across the world to handle the mutant situation. And so right now for Bastion, this right here is him making his move. It's him going after the X-Men. It's Henry Gyrich right now trying his best to get the public on their side because there are a few people out there who hate the idea of mutants. And really, that brings in a huge debate across the world. But before we're able to properly sit down and talk more about that debate, we have to switch back over to the X-Men. And the reason why, because it's the X-Men now getting their introduction to the Prime Sentinels. And for the X-Men, they're kind of like, yo, wait a second. What in the world are these things just flying around at the moment trying to take us out. They're Sentinels, but they're completely new. Now, for the X-Men, while they're trying their best to survive at their school for Charles Xavier, the feds move in. Bastion and the Operation Zero Tolerance members, they also move in as well. They completely lock down the school of Charles Xavier. It's Bastion saying, I am making my move here and today. Like, it's time for me to bring down the entire idea of Charles Xavier's dream. But getting back over to the debate, you have different people across the nation right now watching the news. They're watching what's basically happening to people who are supposedly citizens across America, but now being attacked because they are mutants. And so they're kind of like, is this correct? Like, is this the correct path to take when it comes to the mutant race? And for some folks, it's completely wrong. For some folks, it's completely right. And so right now, for the public, they're kind of divided at the moment with the idea of Operation Zero Tolerance. With all that happening, though, we switch back over to the X-Men one last time. The reason why I say one last time, because for the X-Men, they have now been officially defeated by Bastion and his army, like Storm captured, Cyclops captured, Cannonball captured, Wolverine and Jean Grey, they may have gotten away, we don't know yet. But then we have to switch over to the school of Charles Xavier because, again, it's on complete lockdown. But it's Bastion right now moving into the actual building. But before we see what Bastion is trying to do at the school of Charles Xavier, there's still other members of the X-Men who are out there who weren't with the rest of the team. Like, for example, that would be Iceman. Because for Bobby Drake, he stepped away to take care of his father. Because for Bobby Drake, this man was away from the X-Men because his father got injured when he went undercover trying to bring down Graydon Creed. But now seeing the news, it's Bobby saying like, Dad, I gotta go. His dad's like, son, I understand. Go ahead and go. And so just like that, Iceman is back on the X-Men once again. But as we close on the first chapter, I kind of want to end the first chapter on this note right here when it comes to Bastion, but also like how we got here. Because for the X-Men, the 1990s, they had many crossovers. I mean, many crossovers. But the problem was the last few moments in time for X-Men in Marvel Comics kind of led into this moment. The idea of Onslaught, this mutant that attacked New York, killing off 34 people, killing off the Avengers, supposedly, killing off Fantastic Four, supposedly. But also on top of that, the death of Graydon Creed as well. That right there, a guy who was trying to run for president to hopefully handle the mutant situation got killed off. And other things prior to those events right there were just there, being building blocks as well, leading into Operation Zero Tolerance. And so for Bastion, we kind of find out the dude also has Charles Xavier with him. And you have Bastion being able to mimic the voice of Charles Xavier, allowing him the ability to access all the different files of Charles Xavier, better known as the Xavier Protocol. Just like that, Bastion has officially won in his head right now. He's all like, your dream is over. Like, now it's time for me to take over. Now, the next issue I do want to talk about is issue number 67 for X-Force, because here's the reason why. This issue is not really labeled as part of the Operation Zero Tolerance event, but as you read through it, you're like, oh yeah, this most definitely takes place in the actual event. And the reason why, because as we get into the opening pages of this storyline, this issue, we pick up at this research center. Now, this center was supposed to find a cure for cancer. The problem was that out of nowhere, you had this mutant group just move in and take over the entire place. Now, you do have the good old St. Louis feds there trying to figure out what they're going to do. But then out of nowhere, you have different operatives who work for Operation Zero Tolerance up here saying like, hey, we are officially taking over. This is a mutant problem that we have to handle. Now we do learn like which mutant group out there right now is holding up this center, and that would be the Mutant Liberation Front. Now we have not talked about them in a good while when it comes to our coverage over the X-Men, because really they're really big when they first appeared in Marvel Comics working for Strife. Now, even though Strife is long gone by this point, you still have the group try their best to function out there as this terrorist group that goes out of their way to attack different places that might be targeting mutants. Like, for example, even though this place said like, hey, our main goal right now is to find a cure for cancer, they believe that's a fat lie. That in reality, they're right now trying to create another version of the legacy virus to hopefully kill off the mutant race. And that is why they're here at the moment. But we also get reminded about the idea of Dani Moonstar. Now, for Dani Moonstar, as we all know, she was one of the original members of the New Mutants. But the thing is, by this point in our coverage of the X-Men, we had learned that she is now an undercover SHIELD agent who's right now trying to bring down the Mutant Liberation Front. And the thing is that in the earlier parts of our coverage over X-Force, we saw her just pop up out of nowhere working with that group. And for the different members of the X-Force, especially the ones who were part of the New Mutants back in the day, they felt a tad bit betrayed about the idea of Dani Moonstar being with the Mutant Liberation Front, not really knowing that she is an undercover SHIELD agent. Now they know now, but they also kind of felt like she could have told them that she was an undercover SHIELD agent. Now we already know. You can't tell anybody anything when you go, I don't know, undercover. Now, with all that being said, when it comes to Dani Moonstar and the rest of the group, they just got word. The entire place is completely surrounded by operatives who work for Operation Zero Tolerance. And by this point, most mutants know about the idea of Operation Zero Tolerance. Like, you do not want to mess with these guys. They are the big leagues. But you do have Locust appear. Now, when she appears, she has the ability to get them the heck out of there. The problem is that for Wildside, he does not want to leave at all. He feels like they have a chance to take on different agents who work for Operation Zero Tolerance, but also they came here for a mission to basically bring down the whole entire center that's lying the world saying that they're trying to find a cure for cancer, that in reality, they're trying to create a new version of the legacy virus. And so he slaps Locust. Now, when he does that, that ticks her off, and she teleports away, leaving the rest of the group behind. And when an event like this happening in this city, of course you have like different reporters just popping up left and right. But here's the thing, because out of nowhere, you have 3 people appear who are claiming to work for one of the local news channels. But in reality, it's different members of X-Force just in disguise. Sunspot, Siren, and also Domino. They're just in disguise at the moment. Now, with that being said, while they're there, you didn't have Moonstar see them on the computer screen. And she realized, okay, that's actually X-Force. And I can use them to help me accomplish my mission, which is bringing down the entire group here of Mutant Liberation Front. And so she tells Wildside, hey, why don't we go out of our way and bring in some reporters to share our story? With them coming inside, though, that also helps us keeping the different members of the Operation Zero Tolerance at bay long enough to figure out a way out of this situation. And so for Wildside, he agrees to do it. Now, for Domino, she does try to make a deal with the commander of this group, and that will be Ekaterina. Now, for Ekaterina, she'll become somewhat important for the overall story of X-Force. Like, we'll see her a few more times in our coverage of this team right here. But when it comes to her being the commander, Domino has no choice but to make a deal with her by basically saying like, hey, listen, a member of the Mutant Liberation Front had called us and want us to do an interview with them inside that place. So allow us inside, but also we could possibly be used as a way to help you get the hostages out of there. Now, for the commander, she at first does not want to do that at all. But for Domino, she says, hey, let's not forget what happened in Waco. If things go south really fast here, that means your whole entire operation will lose its support from the people, but also from the government. And so for Domino, she now found her way inside the actual facility. Now, for a brief moment, we have to switch over to Cable and Caliban. Now, they're at the school of Charles Xavier, and as we all saw in the first chapter, the entire school got locked down. Now, we can technically say that this part right here does take place prior to the idea of the school of Charles Xavier getting locked down, so that's why you have Cable and also Caliban just chilling without being attacked by anybody at the moment. But when it comes to Caliban, we had to skip over a few issues because, well, some issues going on with books not being online just yet. And so when it comes to our cover of the X-Force, we missed the idea of finding out that for Caliban, he's now having seizures, but also having nightmares as well. And so for Cable, what he wants to do is get Caliban over to Moira McTaggart to run a few tests to figure out what exactly is going on with Caliban. What's even crazier is that for Caliban, at the same time he began to have these seizures and also having these nightmares around the same time that Archangel was able to regrow his old wings again. Let me explain, because as we all know, for Caliban and also Archangel, they both were modified by Apocalypse in the early parts of our coverage over X Factor. And so around the same time you had Angel being able to regain his lost wings, while at the same time Caliban began to have these nightmares, but also these seizures as well. But it's also Cable pointing out the fact that him and the other two characters have all been affected by Apocalypse in different ways. But getting back over to St. Louis, we see that Team A, which is Domino, Sunspot, and also Siren being fake reporters going inside the actual facility. There's a Team B. That'll be Richter, Meltdown, better known as Boom Boom, and also Shatterstar right now on the outside, just waiting for the time for things to pop off to help their team out in a tight situation. The problem is that when Team A go inside the actual building, the feed gets cut off, and Team B begins to freak out. As soon as they exit their van, they are confronted by the different members of Operation Zero Tolerance. They figured out what's happening here with X-Force and take out Team B just like that. And so now Team A is technically on their own at the moment. And this kind of leads us into, well, the ending of this chapter, because for Team A, they realize the feed has been cut off. And with the feed being cut off, they begin to, well, freak out. And so you have our heroes wondering what exactly is going on with Team B. But then you have different members of the Mutant Liberation Front realize that Team A are not really reporters, that instead they're really, X-Force. And so this leads into a small battle. Now, once you do have our heroes being able to win the battle, you also have Moonstar tell the different members of the MLF that she was an undercover S.H.I.E.L.D. agent. And so her goal now is to call up S.H.I.E.L.D. to have S.H.I.E.L.D. move in, grab their targets, and also get X-Force the heck out of there. The problem is that inside the actual facility is 3 scientists who are actually members of Operation Zero Tolerance because they're Prime Sentinels. They changed their forms, and now Team A X-Force has to deal with Prime Sentinels at the moment. And the last thing about this chapter is that we see Caliban right now just laying in bed, not realizing that he has somebody watching over him. And that would be, well, Ozymandias. Now, when it comes to Ozymandias, he is technically a major character when it comes to Apocalypse. The question is now, what does he want with Caliban? And so as we dive into X-Force issue number 68, what we're getting into now is seeing our heroes trying their best to fight against the Prime Sentinels. The problem is that these Prime Sentinels were created in a way to be able to adapt to all types of mutant abilities. And so right now for the Prime Sentinels, they're really getting the edge over our heroes. And for our heroes, they also have the help of MLF to kind of help out with this situation. But the problem is the Prime Sentinels are just way too strong for our heroes. Now, for Domino, what she did was she brought some explosives with her, and she says, hey, listen, I need everyone else to get the heck out of here while I stay behind and try my best to blow them up. She's also kind of hoping with the idea of her luck powers that she will basically survive. And so for X-Force, they had no choice. They have to leave her behind as she does use the explosives to hopefully defeat these 3 Prime Sentinels. Now, when it comes to X-Force, right after they do leave, you didn't have the commander move in. Now, when she does move in, she does recognize Domino. And we learn here that apparently her and Domino, they have some kind of connection between one another. The question is now, what is that connection? And matter of fact, she says, hey, listen, do not tell Bastion about her at all. I want you to her personally. Now, I kind of have been saying this for a while, that when it comes to our coverage over the X-Men, running into this small issue where we're not really able to cover every single thing about the X-Men, because a lot of different issues between X-Men, X-Force, X-Factor have not been officially brought over to the digital side of comics yet. And so with that happening, I'm not really able to cover a lot of different things. The reason why I bring that up right now, because when it came to X-Force comics, we had to go over like a good 5 or 6 issues. And so with that happening, we miss a very interesting storyline when it comes to Warpath. You see, there was this character known as Sledge. When it comes to Sledge, he was this random character that popped up out of nowhere. But for Sledge, he knew a young girl known as Risque. When it came to Risque, she was a young girl that was saved by him. But he said, because I saved you, you now have to help me in the future. Fast forward, the future came. And so he told her, hey, listen, I need you to bring me a mutant known as Warpath. And so, of course, she did. The problem was for Warpath and Risque, at first, it did seem like these 2 characters could fall in love with one another. But in reality, that was not the case at all. It was just her playing him to get him over to Sledge. Because Sledge wanted to use Warpath to go into a different dimension to find his lost friend. His lost friend is Vanisher. Now, we had talked a lot about Vanisher in the past, but for the sake of this video, I'm not going to sit down and re-explain who he is, because he's not really major right now for the whole idea of Operation Zero Tolerance. But for Warpath, that is why he's not with X-Force at the moment, because right now he's working with Sledge. Now, the reason why you have Warpath agree to work with Sledge is because Warpath is currently looking for somebody known as Michael Whitecloud. Now, when it comes to Michael, he's part of Warpath's tribe. The problem was that at the very beginning of X-Force comics, we saw the entire tribe get taken out. And so with that being said, for Warpath, his entire family was also wiped out as well. And so he believed his whole entire tribe was gone, to only find out that one member of his tribe is still alive. And that'll be Michael Whitecloud. The problem is Warpath can't find him, and Sledge said, if you help me, then I can help you find your missing person. Now, getting back over to the commander, we see her having a conversation with Bastion. Now, this conversation is really more of her lying to Bastion's face. Now, at first, she tells the truth, like, hey, listen, we have captured some members of X-Force, but also some members of the Mutant Liberation Front as well. But unfortunately, we had also lost Domino. Now, with that being said, we already know she's lying. She captured Domino. And for Bastion, he wanted to use Domino as a way to get to Cable. But now he's hearing like, oh, Domino got away? That sucks. But in reality, the commander is holding on to her. But this begins us learning like what is the actual connection between Domino and also this commander. Now, the commander had told us that she has been trying to study the past of Domino to figure out everything about Domino. Now, here's the thing, because she does try her best to share us different pieces of information about Domino. But here's the problem though. Some of these information pieces that she's giving us cannot be confirmed by the book nor by Domino. The only two things we can confirm right now is the idea that one, Domino was married, and two, Domino was part of a team called Six Pack alongside with Cable. But the rest is kind of questionable. But the question is right now, okay, why was Commander trying to learn everything about Domino for? Like, what did Domino do to Commander in the past? And we learned that in the past, there was this facility, right? This facility was basically trying to create this special kind of link between people and drones to be used out there in the battlefield without the idea of putting human lives in danger. The problem was that you had Domino break into that facility to get the person that was trying to create that project. Now, for Domino, she had to face against a drone that was cyberlinked to somebody. And so when it came to Domino, when she had used an EMP to shut down that drone, there was a massive feedback that went over to the drone's host. That host was the Commander, and she was put into a coma for many months. Now, for Bastion, he came by and took her and turned her into a Prime Sentinel, but also kind of used her as an undercover agent to kind of learn more information, possibly about the X-Men, but especially about different people like Domino and other mutants. But for the Commander, she loves the idea that she was saved by Bastion to get the chance to get back at Domino. And the issue ends on that note right there. And of course, this is where we're going to end today's comic book videos. With that being said, guys, please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.